So data can be anything that can be converted or processed to make some meaningful information. It can be images, it can be text, it can be graphics, it can be videos, anything that you will process to make some meaningful information from that. Data is unstructured, it is not organized. You process it and make use of it, that becomes the information. So we have different categories of data. Like the first one is the open and public data. So what is meant by open and public data means the type of data that are freely available to the public without any restrictions. Means you don't need to pay a specific amount to access that data. They are available freely, and whenever you want to access that data, you can access it. Like the data provided by the government organization, research institute, or any international organization, so that you can use the data for your own purpose. Like the government statistics are available, like how much is the population of the country. The population data is freely available. What is the crime rate in a specific country? So such kind of data is available freely. Then research publications means the data repository that shares the research papers that are freely available for scientific advancement. Means the scientist can use that research papers to perform their research or their experiment. Like we have Google Scholar, the biggest research repository where you can download any research paper related to your research. So such kind of data that is available freely is known as public or open data. Then we have the environmental data, like what is the climate data, what is the air quality there, what is the weather there. So such kind of data is also freely available. So these are some examples of open and public data. I'm again repeating the type of data that is available freely without any restriction. Such kind of data is known as the open and public data. Then we have private data. Means a type of information that is restricted to a specific group. Not everyone is allowed to access that data. Like it can be the health records, it can be the social security numbers of different persons, then the financial records of that organization. That is also a private kind of data. It's not available publicly. Not everyone can access that data. Then the private communications like your emails or the private chat logs, not everyone publicly can view that. So that is the private data. Then we have the internal data. Means a type of data that belongs to a specific organization. Means, for example, if you are working in a company, then the data related to your company is called the internal data. It can be the payrolls, it can be the performance evaluations of all the employees, it can be the sales history of your previous years, or such sort of data is known as the internal data. That can be used for operational decision makings, for planning purpose. So for that purpose, organization may use their internal data. So such kind of data cannot be shared outside with the outside parties or publics. If there is a specific condition, under some specific condition, then that data can be shared with anyone. So that is the internal data, means the type of data that is belongs to your specific organization, and you are not supposed to share that data outside the company. Only the employees of that company are allowed to access that data. Then we have another type of data, that is the research data. Means the research data is the collection of data that you collect during your research projects. Now, here this data can be qualitative, this can be quantitative. Qualitative means that you consider the quality of data rather than the quantity of data. So basically, the data that is collected for the research purpose means you have a specific research project, you want to complete your research on that. So you collect that data. So it can be the survey papers or it can be the survey results that you collect. Like in social science studies, you do surveys or observational studies. Then it can be the experimental data from your laboratory work or research field in various scientific domains. So such sort of data that can or that was being used by some research purpose is known as the research data. So that was the types of data. Then nowadays we have another type of data that is used, that is the big data. Now, what is big data? Big data refers to the data set that is in a very large volume and that is too much complex that it can be very hard to process that data. So, traditional data processing methods or tools are not sufficient to handle them because that data is very large and complex. So now we have two categories of these data. Either we call that data a unstructured data or we call that data a semi-structured data. Like for example, the data that is coming from social media applications, means your Twitter form feeds, your Facebook interactions. Now, on daily basis, billions of people use the social media application. Each user have its own personal data. So if we try to calculate that data cannot be calculated. So that's why we call that data, that kind of data comes under the category of big data. So if we use our traditional methods to retrieve that data, then it can be impossible for us because that data is in a very large volume and we cannot retrieve or process the data with our traditional tools. Then the sensors data from the IoT devices such as your smart meters or your different smart wearables, the data that is collected by different sensors is also comes under the category of big data. Then the transactional data means now on daily basis, billions of daily transactions in financial institute take place. So the data that is collected from that is known as your transactional data. So all the data that we have discussed here is in a very large volume. So that's why we call that data big data. That cannot be processed with our traditional method. So that was the data and different types or categories of data. Now, why it is important to classify that data? Why we must classify data according to their category, according to which type that data belongs. The first one is the regulations and the guidelines that must be fulfilled. Means let's suppose in the healthcare industry, we have a law called Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act that says that there should be a strict control over medical records. So you must classify that records as private or restricted to protect your patient privacy. So that's why we need to classify data, that whether our data is public kind of data, whether it is a private sort of data, or whether that type of data is restricted, under which category the data belongs. So that's why to follow the laws and regulations, we need to classify that data. Now, that was the law for the healthcare industry. We have another law for different organizations like the General Data Protection Regulation Law that says that you have to ensure that whether it's any application that is going to use the customer data, they have to ensure that without the customer permission, or the user permission, we cannot use their data. And we have to ensure the privacy of their data. So that's why, due to these reasons, we need to classify that data. That whether the data is of that type, it can be public, or if the data is sensitive, then we have to restrict it, or we have to put under the category of the private data. So it only depends upon the condition, what kind of data we need and what kind of security we have to provide. Like for example, if it's the general data, like the how much population a country has, this is a general information that can be put publicly. So that comes under the category or classified as public data. But if it's the patient record, that can be a private data. So according to the type of data, we classify that data. Then the second reason to classify the data is to protect the data confidentiality and security. Means when you classify that data, you will help it will help you to categorize it based on the sensitivity. Like you will classify the data organization according to the security measures. Means if the data is a type of data that is public, like if it's financial data, means the transactions that you have made, then it must be encrypted, and that kind of data must be authorized to some authorized person, so that it will reduce the risk of data breach. Now we have, if a public kind of data is available, just like I mentioned that it can be the record of the population of the country, it can be the different, you can say that currency rate, some sort weather conditions. So such kind of data can be put public. But if that is the patient record or record that is related to a specific person, or if it's related to your final transaction, then you classify that data as highly confidential. So that's why, to ensure that data is protected, safe, and for the security of data, we classify that data. Then what are the usage rights for the level of access? Now, according to the sensitivity of data, we define the level of access for each and every data. Like the data classification will help you to define who can have the access to certain type of data. Like for example, a company can classify the payrolls information as restricted, so only the HR staff or any top level executive can view this data. Now, on the other hand, we have the marketing data on our website that is available. Now, you can consider that data as public, or it can be available to all employees so that they can make a better decision for the next product that they want to launch. So, depending on the sensitivity of data, we classify that data, whether that data have to be public, whether it have to be private, or whether it have to be protected. So now we discuss different categories of data. We discuss why it is important to classify that data. Now we discuss three types of data. We have here three types of data. We have the structured data, we have the unstructured data, and we have the semi-structured data. Means the data that is highly organized, that is stored in a fixed format, just like the data that is stored in your databases. So that kind of data that you can organize and structure is known as your structured data. Like it will be easy for you to process the data. You can analyze that data. Like for example, you can organize in a format such as in the form of rows and columns. You can organize the data. You can assign a data type to that data, like whether it's a integer, whether it's a string, or whether it's something else. Then the structured data is easy to research and compute. Means you can do the processing easily on that data, depending upon the context of that data. Just like in this example, the data that is stored here, the data that is stored in the tabular form, like whether it's a spreadsheet or SQL data. Now here the company seals data over the several years, like in the columns and rows you arrange the data. So such kind of data is known as your structured data. Or whether it's your transactional data, means the banking and e-commerce use to store your transactions data like this. So that data is also in the organized form. So this is also known as the structured data. So after that, we have another type of data, that is the semi-structured data. Now that data is also structured and also unstructured. Means the data that falls between the both categories, structured and unstructured. Then such kind of data is known as the semi-structured data. Means you don't have a fixed rigid format. Like here in the structured data, you don't have a specific format, that whether it's a tabular data or whether you don't define a specific data type here, but you used to store that data here. Like for example, the log files that are generated when you do some transactions or when you use the internet, like in this format. Like on this date, on this time, the information user logged with this username. Now, they fail to load some resource, then the resource ID, when was the time they was failed to load the resource. So everything, if it's a warning message, so this is how the data is present. Now, it is not in the tabular form, but it is also not fully unstructured. So the log files that are generated while using internet or any application comes under the category of the semi-structured data. Now we have a third type of data, that is the unstructured data. Means that don't have any predefined schema or structure. Means that it is in the raw format. That can be the images, that can be audios, that can be the chats, that can be the personal user account details of the social media applications. So that kind of data that is in the raw form or in the unorganized format. So that sort of data is known as the unstructured data. Like we have a photo, we have different types or different extensions to store the image. Like we have PNG, we have JPEG. So that contains pixels of data. So depending upon different types of data and how it can be integrated. Now we cannot store the images in the table form. We cannot store the audio files that contain sound data in the tabular form. It will not clearly organize in the tabular organizations. So that's why we call that data the unstructured data. Then we have the videos, emails, and social media posts. Means it consists of frames and audios. Now we don't have any inherent structure here. Same as the emails. Email contains some structure metadata like the center, the data subjects, content like the body of email. It's often are unstructured data. Then we have our social media post, means the tweets or the post on your social media platform. That is also unstructured because these are the text, the images, the videos that can be greatly in different kind of format. We cannot create a specific table because on daily basis, billions of user do the different posts on different social media platform. Billions or trillions of data is generated every minute. So that will be hard for us to organize the data. So such kind of data is known as the unstructured data, or we can call it as that it also comes under the category of the big data. So after that, we have discussed different types of data. We have discussed what are the different categories of data and what is data, why it is important to classify that data.